This year is also to fix the commuter rail, which is vital to the economy and to the quality of the life of our people. Our rail network daily transports hundreds of thousands of commuters to and from work. We are modernizing PRASA rail network. The Central Line in the Western Cape and the Mabopane line in Pretoria have been closed for essential refurbishment and upgrades. We are investing 1.4 billion rand in each of these lines to provide a safe, reliable, and affordable service.
C3 and SABC News Channel 404. My name is Desiree Chauke. Our conversation today, you know how many love songs have been written about people meeting on the trains, and that used to be just such an important and a reliable source of transport in the country. But based on the troubles that we've been reporting on recently coming out from PRASA, it seems like not the case anymore. Quite an important conversation. Much of our attention has been put on the SAA process and the troubles at Eskom, but PRASA is also in the spotlight tonight, and we would like to welcome in the studio Makosini Mgijwa. He's the spokesperson for the Passenger Rail Agency of South Africa, PRASA. Thank you so much for coming through. We also like to welcome Sonia Custance, the Deputy General Secretary for United National Transport Union, UNTU. I don't have to introduce you because you have your shirt there identifying where you're coming from. And from our Cape Town studios, let's welcome Zaki Ahmad from Unite Behind, a commuter activist group. Zaki, a very good evening and thank you for making it tonight.
Thank you.
Let's start our conversation with you, Makosini. Just bring us up to speed in terms of the administrative process led by Nkosi Mpondo.
Look, what we are currently doing now, it is to try to fix PRASA, which is, for all intents and purposes, a broken organization. And that's not an exaggeration, right? There is a lot of problems that are besetting PRASA. In terms of volumes, we're not moving as many people as we should be moving. Drastically, the numbers have gone down.
In fact, the number is, it's down by 76% from 53.2 million in 2009 to 12.6 million. That must really be denting profitability.
Absolutely. If you take the two busiest lines in the country, which is the Mabopane line in Tshwane and the Central line in Cape Town.
The one that the president was on.
Yes, was talking about. And all of us can feel it. You see, the problem is most of the time when we talk about PRASA, we make the mistake of thinking that it's one of the SOEs that are not doing well. It affects a lot of people in a very, very tangible way. If you want to fly to Cape Town in the morning, land at 8 o'clock or 8:30, it may take you 2 hours to get to Cape Town because the Central Line is closed and traffic is moving from rail to the road.
What do you mean there?
Look, the Central Line, you know, the train line that's supposed to transport people from criss and other places is not working. So people have to get on buses, they have to get on taxis. And it's devastating to poor people because if you take somebody who earns 3,500 rands per month and you say they must pay 100 rand for a return trip in a taxi, they may as well sit at home. And, you know, the problems that are besetting PRASA also have a great impact on the economy because it is one mode of transport that moves the working class, people who can afford other modes of transportation. But I don't want to paint a picture of gloom and doom because we are facing a crisis, and with every crisis you have an opportunity. We are at a T-junction. PRASA can go left and perish and disappear, and if nothing is done about PRASA, there won't be PRASA at the end of the year.
Okay,
so something has to be done.
I will still push a bit for you to tell us what you've been doing so far. But Zaki, welcome into the conversation. You once championed, you know, a cause for access to antiretrovirals in the country, and you prevailed. And when South Africans see you get involved in a cause that's now seemingly hopeless, as Makosini was saying just now, it kind of raises expectations. As Unite Behind, What have you uncovered in terms of the rot that we've been reporting on at PRASA?
Let's start here. About 500 people die on PRASA rail every year around the country. And people die by being stabbed on the train or being thrown off the train and so on. That's the number of people who die.
Wow.
On top of it, thousands more are injured. The delays is phenomenal. I think the PRASA spokesperson can only say criss, but let's see which people on the Central Line don't have trains at the moment. Started Mitchell's Plain. It includes Mitchell's Plain, it includes Manenberg, it includes Nyanga, includes Bonteheuwel. Started criss, it includes most of Khayelitsha and Philippi. Now, the fact of the matter is that our president has failed, our current minister and previous ministers have failed. PRASA has a crisis of governance. It's had that since about 2004, 2006, when Sifiso Buthelezi headed the board. It is one of the most corrupt institutions. It has lost about 24 to 30 billion rand through state capture. And the general situation is this, that PRASA's had about 10 different types of governance between 2006 and now, when we have an unlawfully appointed administrator. And I say unlawfully not because Mr. Mpondo is necessarily the worst person, although we can question that, whether he's the best. The question is this, that nothing in the South African Legal Succession Act allows the minister to appoint an administrator. Secondly, the Public Finance Management Act is very clear that you have to have, for an institution like PRASA, you have to have an accounting authority. So an accounting authority is a board. Currently, PRASA spends about 15, or has a budget of as a budget of 12 billion for capital expenditure, and it has overspent its operational expenses, and as you've seen, trips have come down and people don't pay. There's no more payment into the kitty for fares. So what we have now is a situation which is a disaster. It is easy to say it's a broken institution, it is a crisis, and a crisis is an opportunity. But the fact of the matter is, we are not treating this in a way that shows that it's a disaster by appointing a permanent board, appointing permanent leadership, and critically, from where we sit, in that situation, you have disaster management teams. I would like to ask the PRASA spokesperson whether he supports devolution of rail. Premier Makura has asked for PRASA to be devolved to his province so that especially the 3 metros, that they can run it. Similarly, the city of Cape Town has asked to take over PRASA. And we support, I'm speaking for myself now, I support it because first, the Constitution says that public transport is should be devolved locally. It's concurrent jurisdiction. Similarly, the ANC's policies since 1996 has been very clear that where there is capacity, municipal public transport, rail should be included, especially with the metros where there is capacity. We know that PRASA has failed dramatically. It has to be devolved where there's capacity at municipal or provincial level, like in Gauteng. So I would like the PRASA spokesperson to address that. Unfortunately, the administrator is not here, and neither is the minister. I don't think the spokesperson can answer what the minister did wrong in appointing the administrator, and I think the administrator should answer for himself why he is not asking the minister to ensure that his appointment is regularized.
We actually had invited the administrator, but we got a confirmation, and later in the day, Mr. Mkhichwa, you had to come in. Hold your thoughts. Okay. We have to take a break. You're watching Unfiltered. Stay with us and let us know on social media how you feel about this conversation. We'll be back in a moment.
When commuters lose jobs as a result of chronic delays and cancellations of trains, their rights are affected. When commuters are injured, maimed or killed in the trains, their rights are affected. We are therefore under no illusion about our obligations to transport our people safely in a manner that enables sustainable livelihoods.
Well, it's an important conversation, and we did invite the Minister of Transportation, Mr. Philemon Mbalula, to come join us in this conversation. Alas, he wasn't able to make it, but Mr. Zaki Ahmed making the point there that he appointed an administrator unilaterally at PRASA, and we'll come back to that conversation. But let's just bring in Sonia Custance from the Deputy General Secretary at the United National Transport Union, UNTU. One of the elements of the PRASA story is the people who work there. Recently, you were defending a woman driver, train driver, who was attacked by commuters because they were insisting that she stop at a stop that wasn't her stop, but they attacked her to force her to stop there. Just take us through some of the issues that, especially relating to safety, that people who work for PRASA undergo.
The working conditions of PRASA employees are simply horrific. The example you were referring to was a female driver the commuters wanted to force her to stop in between routes. In other words, she had no authority to stop at that point to drop off commuters. And she continued until it was safe, until she was authorized to stop, and they simply attacked her. They stoned her in her cabin. She was stuck there for more than an hour because she refused to do something illegally. Just before her, another train driver at Bellville Station was attacked 5 minutes past 9 at night. He was turning around his train from Bellville Station to Kraaifontein Station. 3 armed robbers attacked him, put a knife to his throat, wanted his personal belongings. He gave his bag. He wanted to get out his cell phone out of his pocket, and then they simply stabbed him. 2 millimeters deeper, and he would have lost the usage of his right arm, the arm with which he drives the train. Yeah. He has been working for PRASA for 28 years.
Are these regular occurrences?
Daily. It's a daily occurrence, and it's all over the show. Remember, PRASA has got 14,000 employees. Some of them are train crews. Some of them work with commuters themselves.
How are you protecting the rights of your members?
Well, we're doing everything we can. Obviously, for the past 4 years, UNTU has been on the forefront of taking this action and taking it to the public. We've actually had an application at NETLAC. We obtained a strike certificate, and on the 26th of July last year, we handed over memorandums to the President. But there's a lack of political will to make a change at PRASA, and it's not the fault of the administrator, it's not the fault of the PRASA employee, 14,000 thereof.
So you agree with Zaki that the President has failed?
The President has failed us completely, and all his previous ministers. We've had 5 since 2005. We had 5 or 6 boards since 2005. All of them have failed us. All of them has failed PRASA.
Zaki, Unite Behind has taken the minister to court in relation to what has been called the unilateral appointment of an administrator. How far is that process? Is it yielding any results?
Well, the minister's indicated his opposition. PRASA has, as usual, not responded at all. The administrator hasn't responded at all. And on the 17th of March, the matter will be heard. We have given strict instructions to our lawyers to not allow any extensions. As you know, we also are in court against PRASA on the question of giving access to information to the unlawful security contracts we've had. Sonia's mentioned the question of safety, but let's be absolutely clear what the problem is here. PRASA has unlawful contracts which dates back to the time when it was part of Transnet as part of the South African Rail Commuter Corporation. And one of Jacob Zuma's best friends, Roy Moodley, is one of the people who has these unlawful contracts. Again, Arthur Fraser, the former head of state security, got 70 million rand to help protect our infrastructure, the breaking of railway lines and so on. So we're in court to get access to those contracts. The administrator, in his wisdom, PRASA, before the board then, has not given the court what they'd agreed to give the court. Similarly, when the contracts were cancelled unilaterally by the previous PRASA board, again, we had to go to court with security companies who aren't performing as they should, but to ensure that there's at least some security guards available. Again, and here the PRASA spokesman has to tell us this tonight. Why have they failed to provide the court with a commuter safety plan that looks at vulnerable people, women who are sexually harassed on trains daily, girls and boys who are pushed off the trains, the elderly who struggle to get on or struggle to get off, to look at ways that that can be addressed. Instead, the administrator, in his own wisdom, again cancelled security companies in Pretoria, and as a consequence, he now has another court order against him.
Zaki, I'm going to ask you to hold on to your thoughts.
I'd like to disagree with Sonia. I know that they have to retain good relationships with the administrator because they're employees. But the fact of the matter is this: the administrator is not doing his job, not because he is a bad person, but because one person cannot turn the Titanic around.
And on that
one
note,
person with a team, technical advisory team, is not enough to finish that. You need a permanent board, permanent staff.
Okay, thanks, Zaki. Let's take a break. We'll be back with this conversation when we return. And perhaps Mr. Mkhichwa can try and unpack those issues that have been raised for us. Don't go away.
Trains don't run efficiently, they don't run on time, they delay people who are going to work, they arrive late at work, many of them get disciplined because this happens every day, and they've run out of excuses, and some of them even get fired, they lose their jobs.
Yeah, that's what we want to know, why PRASA is not providing a reliable and safe train operation. And that's the question we're asking you on Unfiltered tonight. Has PRASA messed up what was once a reliable mode of transport? Let's bring back our into the conversation our guests again. Mr. Mkhichwa, as you heard Zaki saying, why are you not providing safety for both your employees and the commuters? But the other question, you alluded earlier on in the conversation that you're working on fixing PRASA. Mm-hmm. Now, the Competition Commission is saying let's unbundle PRASA. Where do these two processes, where do they meet?
I think you should have wanted me to bring a notebook to take points, because, I mean, there's a lot of questions that are directed at me, and I can't remember all of them. So I'm not avoiding any question. It's just that many questions are being thrown at me, and I can't recall all of them. Which one do you want to start with? The Competition Commission?
Let's start there.
All right. Our view with regards to the findings of the Competition Commission is that it does not take into consideration PRASA's operating model. You see, when you talk about intermodal facilities like Park Station, we do not we don't have the monopoly of that.
And they say
municipalities,
you do. And they say you're abusing that monopoly.
Yes, but allow me to speak.
Yeah.
I'm saying we do not have the monopoly of the ownership of intermodal facilities. Municipalities have intermodal facilities. They are just not as successful as Park Station. Park Station is successful, and everybody wants to go there.
But they have uncovered that there are revenues going to PRASA in this regard. There's research that has been done here.
Yes, let me explain to you. You see, PRASA, through PRASA criss, our corporate real estate agency, owns Park Station, right? But it also owns a subsidiary called Autopex.
I think given a time when we have time, Mr. Mkhichwa, we would like that explanation. But what the main question is where are the efficiencies here? And where is the accountability?
There are efficiencies in the sense that, you know, people want to get all the modes of transport in one center. If you take Park Station, for instance, you can catch a bus, you can catch a train, and just across the street there's Gautrain, and not verify their taxes. So that's what makes it so successful. And if we were involved in anti-competitive behavior, we wouldn't have been able to increase the number of black operators which are operating out of Park Station. In fact, we have a queue of people who want to get into Park Station so they can operate from there. Those people are not sheep. They are not going into a slaughterhouse. They are going there because there is value that they get that is provided by PRASA. Now, let me deal with another issue that was raised by my colleague in Cape Town. You see, the issue of whether the administrator was appointed legally or not, regularly or not, is a matter that is before courts. He is not a lawyer. Maybe he is, I don't know. Certainly, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not going to sit here and pre-debate issues that are in front of the court of law. Now, it could very well be that, you know, there are questions about the appointment of the administrator. But for now, he is the administrator. He is legal. I mean, I cannot talk about things that are in front of the court.
Zaki, you are lobbying Parliament's Standing Committee on Public Accounts, SCOPA, on PRASA. What do you want Mkhuleko to do?
The first thing is, SCOPA has to ensure that there's an accounting authority, meaning there's a board of control. There's nothing sub judice about this matter. We are not saying this will be the outcome of the court. We are saying this is unlawful in terms of what we see, and PRASA has a right to say it's lawful as they have said.
I'm not going to have a legal argument with. He could very well be a lawyer. Then let him talk to other lawyers. I'm not a lawyer.
You've tried to have legal arguments.
Then give us your argument, Zaki.
Our argument is the following, that the administrator can spend, a CEO can spend up to 100 million rand by going through procurement processes. The Board of Control can spend up to 1 billion or 2 billion or 1.5 billion rand to fix a thing. Now, the question here is, the administrator is both the board and the CEO. That is unacceptable. That
Sonia,
is the sort of lawlessness that leads to state capture and corruption.
Quickly tell us, how are you interacting with the administrator?
At this stage, we're giving the administrator all the support we've got.
We have tried desperately
Zaki, just hold
to
on,
get him to respond.
Hold on a bit, Zaki.
We're giving the administrator all the support. We believe that he needs all the help he can get. It's through the benefit of the 14,000 employees working for PRASA. So at this moment, we are trying to cooperate. We were on the verge of taking PRASA to court. We were on the verge of joining a dispute between PRASA and the Railway Safety Regulator being heard in the Gauteng North High Court on the 26th of February. But then the minister appointed the administrator, and we came out with a statement saying, Administrator, we realize that you are here to turn around things and we want to give you our cooperation. And we've availed ourselves 24/7 to give that support.
Sonia Custance is the Deputy General Secretary, United National Transport Union. We're also talking to Makhosini Mkhichwa, who's from PRASA, and Zaki Ahmad from Unite Behind. This is when we say goodbye to our SABC3 viewers. If you want to continue interacting with the conversation, join us on channel 404 SABC News platform on the other side of the hour. It's a ciao for now.
The war room we are unveiling today will be a game changer. This room that hosts the war room is a physical space that will enable those deployed to the war room to make rapid decisions based on the information they gather from the operations on the ground on an hour-by-hour basis. The screens reflect metrics that the technical team will utilize to track and measure performance daily.
The Transport Minister, yet again, in that conversation where on Unfiltered we're asking you tonight, has PRASA messed up what once was a reliable mode of transport? Let's take a look at two tweets that have come through. Buhle saying, yep, too many PALs, unqualified cadres, golden handshakes, poor research, and totally unqualified heads. BAU saying, PRASA, like other SOEs, are all purses of looters. What makes sad the most is that The boat is sinking year by year, but no one is brought to court, while even the blind can see the looting. Big failure. We are doomed in this country. Let's bring back into the conversation Makosini Mgijwa, the spokesperson, Passenger Rail Agency of South Africa. PRASA, what do you say when you hear commuters feeling so disheartened about PRASA's operations?
You know, this is what really is heartbreaking, and this is what concerns us. This is what concerns the administrator, the minister, and cabinet, because you know, the people who suffer the most are the poor people who rely on you know, these trains as a mode of transport. And you know, we understand how many people have been negatively affected by this, and which is why we have engaged on this major overhaul and turnaround plan for PRASA, which targets issues of governance and the business model of PRASA. We're looking at a whole range of things, because in the end, what we want to do, we want to take PRASA and give it back to the people of South Africa in a much better form than it is now. And I think there's a mistake that we make, and even in the question that is being asked, has PRASA messed up? What is PRASA? Who is PRASA? PRASA is its employees. You know, and employees of PRASA did not do anything to break up PRASA. PRASA was broken by people who were in leadership positions. So it's not the organization itself. The organization was broken. You can't hold it responsible for it being broken.
Sonia, are you satisfied that this effort in yet another list of efforts will yield something for your members as employees?
No, not at all. Remember, we in 2015, we had a report entitled Derailed, written by the former Public Protector Advocate Judy Madonsela. To date, no one has been brought to book with regard to that report. We want to see action. When the Minister of Public Enterprises, Minister Pravin Gordhan, came into power, he said, soon, within months, you will have people walking around in orange overalls. We're still waiting for that. There's been no prosecution, no action in relation to what has been broken within PRASA, and we want to see that. We want to see those responsible being held accountable, and that's not happening. Firstly. Secondly, we do agree that PRASA employees are not to blame, but we cannot shy away from the fact that within any organization there's rotten apples, and we need to filter them through. We need to check whether or not do we have the right people on board. For instance, are there people still in leadership positions who's mentioned in some of the various reports we had from Werkman's attorneys? Yep. If they are mentioned there, why haven't they been taken action against them? That's what we want to see. So people no longer in leadership positions that might have been mentioned in previous reports. And we, as we're sitting here tonight, I know there's still people in very prominent positions, very influential positions that was mentioned in those reports. There's several of them. And we don't want to mention names because we don't want to make ourselves liable for any court action, because they are presumed innocent until proven guilty. But the action needs to be taken, and that's what we want to see.
Zaki, who are the people who should be facing the might of the law?
Well, I think we should start with Sifiso Buthelezi, who's in Parliament, is the chair of the Appropriations Committee. He was the board chair. There's Lucky Montana. There's, at the moment in court, there's a chap called Mtura Swartz. And Sonia will remember this. He used to be head of Western Cape, and then he became head of, was sent to the Eastern Cape, and then he became the head of Rail, Shosholoza Mail, and then he was made head of PRASA's whole entire rail department.
So people get rewarded.
This chappie is being charged at the moment.
Are you saying people get rewarded for the rot?
Absolutely. This chappie was charged with stealing or contributing to the theft of railway lines and sleepers, and using PRASA money to transport this for sale. Similarly, he appointed his mates in Satawu. Now, I know Sonia says that there's no problem or that there are few rotten apples. No, we have to look deeper. If you look at Satawu, Satawu's company benefited from a 40 million rand tender for ticketing on Shosholoza Mail, but this ticketing system has never happened. In fact, and the current national representative of Satawu is someone who was appointed without a matric to become a senior protection officer without any registration at CIRA. Similarly, if you look at the reports on security guards, a significant number of security guards have serious criminal records such as robbery, murder, and so on. There are others with, basic criminal records that any teenager would have, like dacha and so on. That's not the person you want to dismiss. But essentially, the critical question here is, and this, the PRASA spokesperson has to address, everywhere in the world, the best practice in relation to rail is for municipalities to run it. In Gauteng, the best example would be for the province to run it. To simply use Park Station as an example of intermodal transport and how wonderful it is, that should be controlled by the municipality as a whole. That would be unbundling, because at the moment, you have chaos in PRASA, and therefore you have chaos at Site C Station, Park Station, and so on.
Mr. Mkhichwa, is it part of the conversation you're having in this process of trying to overhaul PRASA, bringing authority locally as opposed to nationally?
Let me tell you something interesting. Before I took up this job, I was in the Ministry of Human Settlements, Water and Sanitation. Most of the water problems that you have are because of failures of municipalities, right?
So that's a conversation for another day.
But I'm just making an example that, devolving power to local municipalities is not in and of its own
not if you make them
panacea.
Efficient. Not if you make them efficient.
Yes, but I mean, why don't you make them efficient in other respects? I'm saying the point that I'm trying to make is, I respect what Zaki Ahmad is saying and his views about how this rail issue should be managed. But I'm saying to you, that is not my discussion. That is above my pay grade. What I can talk to you about is, as PRASA is constituted, as PRASA is today, this is what we are planning to do, and these are the problems that we're encountering. I'm available to have that conversation. And I think the conversation of whether the rail operations should be devolved to local municipalities is not a conversation for the spokesperson of PRASA. That's a conversation for South Africans to have. South Africans have a parliament, they have legislatures, they have councils where they can raise these issues and debate them.
I hear what you're saying, and you're correct. But when you insist on as PRASA is constituted, does it mean that you're not amenable to the conversation that the Competition Commission is raising about unbundling? Does that mean that you're not open to the conversation about changing things because the way the efforts that have been put in so far have not yielded any positive results?
Look, we have issued a statement as PRASA that said we are very happy and looking forward to tabling our case at the tribunal, where we are going to make our argument for PRASA's operating model. Now, that matter will be ventilated at that point. And our view, as I have said to you, is that, it is not correct to say that PRASA has a monopoly when PRASA doesn't have a monopoly on intermodal facilities. I have said to you, our operating model at Park Station has led to more black operators coming on board. In fact, as we speak, we have people who are queuing to come. They wouldn't be queuing if they are going to be abused there. They are queuing there because they are going to get value out of it.
We have to take a break at this point, and when we return, we continue with our conversation about the passenger rail operations in South Africa. Stay with us.
Those who are corrupt, thinking this place is for stealing, they've got an appointment with us. We will smoke them out. And that is what we're going to do. And we will do that with the assistance of the board. If the board doesn't assist me, I'm not going to trample over corporate governance. I want a board that is assisting and that is ready to turn the situation around. And I've got a firm belief that this country, South Africa, have got men and women with capabilities.
The central line that gets closed down because trains are burning, because people are getting killed. Whereas when you go to the upper side, where rich people stay, you never get trains that are cancelled. Black and colored working class in this province are paying the cost of management that is unable to do what they're expected to do.
Maybe I'm coming from work, maybe I'm not coming from work because of a school is in a train. We're not safe at all.
Sometimes it's a lot of people, sometimes few, not a lot, because you can't go with the ticket train on the bus. That's why the people they don't buy tickets.
Would you say that a lot of people that used to take the train now no longer take the train?
Because it's delayed sometimes.
And this is what we're talking about, people risking their lives to get from point A to point B. Makosini, we can't have a conversation about PRASA without our viewers asking about those oversized coaches. And I just wanted to refer to that conversation by the minister talking about a board. Of course, that's an old conversation because there's no board any longer. But what happened to that story about the oversized coaches?
Let me tell you something that's going to shock you. There were no oversized coaches. They were not.
Okay, I am shocked.
Right? Yeah, they were not oversized. Full stop.
What is the real story?
The problem was that the process to acquire them was fraught with corruption. It was irredeemably corrupt that it had to be reversed. But it was not because of the size of or the the specifications of those locomotives.
You're not being honest.
Zaki, help us out here.
It's not the coaches, it's the locomotives. Yes. That's the first thing. And it was locomotives that are too tall for particular areas. It was meant to be for long distance, for Shosholoza Mail. But what has in fact happened is the entire deal was corrupt and it was overturned at various levels. And now there's an attempt to get the money back. And we all know that a range of ANC members and a range of companies led by Makenza Mabunda, Ozon Mashaba, all of them benefited directly. So now it's in liquidation. But the NPA, the spokesperson's previous job, they failed to prosecute
Someone balance me out though here. If the process was corrupt, were the locomotives the right ones?
No, they weren't.
No,
the locomotives weren't compatible with our current railway system, so they couldn't go through the bridges, all the bridges. They were too high. Firstly, secondly, there were a gap in between a meter and half a meter. So when you were to get out of this coach, you would have had to jump.
Risking your life once again.
Risking your life, landing on the railway line. If you were in a wheelchair, you would have fallen into the gap. And that's the main problem why we couldn't use that coaches. Or, like Zaki rightfully said, the locomotives.
So, Zaki, when you are putting in these efforts as Unite Behind, and Sonia, as the United National Transport Union, says they are working together with the administrator, does that stymie your efforts a bit in a way?
Sorry?
The fact that the unions are saying that they're working with the administrator in trying to find solutions, and you as Unite Behind are saying we're working to make sure that we bring in proper governance. Where do you find a working relationship with the unions?
Look, there's no question that all of us have to work together. We need to get a minister who understands transport. We need to get a board in. Those are the critical things that we have to do. You know, people talk about burning trains and burning coaches. In 1996, there were 104 train sets in Cape Town. At the moment, we have about 32. PRASA tells us that we need 88, when in fact, the population of Cape Town has doubled. The fact of the matter is this, that we need more trains. But if we look at Gibela, for instance, the minister had gone to open another factory again. The same factory has been opened so many times. But again, from there, we got 20 trains from Brazil, and South Africa's produced not more than 12, I think. If we continued on that line, it would be 2,400 before we get all the trains that we actually need. Having said that, I think all of us need to find a way of working together, and we deeply regret that the administrator has seen it fit not to respond to us on the questions of safety, on security contracts, on Siangena, the case that PRASA, in which he had to ask the court today that PRASA pays at attorney-client scale. That is punitive costs. Does the administrator not admit that he has failed in terms of the PFMA?
Yeah.
We would like to work with the unions.
Zaki, just about the service itself, it has been said that the Western Cape Rail Service is the most troubled. You're closer to that situation than the rest of the country. Just unpack for us what the problems, the specific problems that are related to the Western Cape are.
Well, at the moment, the central line is shut down. That's the first. The second is the theft of copper, of coaches, and so on. Do you know, in the year 2018, 2019, 500 coaches were stolen. 500 coaches. Now, you tell me, how does one steal a coach if it's not an inside job? And these are the problems. So,
and what to do with
it's interesting that people... Yes, so here's the question. Where are our security services? Where's SABC? Where's the intelligence, crime intelligence? Where's the intelligence agencies? Above all, when does PRASA get decent security?
Makosini, between
These
the reports,
are the questions that...
Yeah, between the reports of angry commuters, lawlessness that's been reported, the Competition Commission's report, the railway safety regulators' restrictions, what for PRASA is priority going forward? For our viewers watching now and wanting some semblance of a sense of there's something being done, what are the low-hanging fruit?
In the next few weeks, Minister Mbalula is going to visit Cape Town, is going to visit Tshwane. He's going to talk to community organizations affected by the Mabopane line, as well as the central line. We're going to be spending 1.4 billion rands on each project, as the president announced. Amongst those things, we're going to beef up security. We're going to build a perimeter wall so to protect our infrastructure. We are going to be using high-tech security, gadgets like drones, face recognition, biometric, and all those things that can be able...
How long will it take to implement this?
We are looking at September to start a limited service, opening Central Line and Mabopane Line, and it should be fully functional around April, May next year.
Sonia?
We've heard this all before, unfortunately, and it never materialised in the past. We don't agree with the statement that the Western Cape is the worst off. The Western Cape experienced the train torchings, but nationwide, we're worse. All over the show. It's horrible. It's a horrible, horrible situation. Drones, all the high-tech technology we're talking about now, it was promised to us years ago. We're not seeing it being implemented.
Yeah.
So, from our side, we would like to see drastic action. With drastic action, we are asking, where's the Rapid Rail unit of the South African Police Force? They are a unit mandated and dedicated to railway security. We don't see them functional at our railway lines. We don't see them functional at platforms at all. So Minister Becky Cele must respond to that question. Secondly, the railway safety regulator has no teeth. It's a useless organisation in total. It's not the same, it can't be even compared to civil aviation. When they ground an airline, we don't see that airline operating until it's declared safe. That's not the situation with the railway safety regulator. They've grounded Social Laws Mail after a second incident in 3 years. We've got Metro Rail, we had 7 incidents over the past 3 years. Still Metro Rail is allowed to operate. That's unacceptable to us. So we urgently need to look at the mandate and the authority of the railway safety regulator.
How do you justify the work that you're doing and the kind of budgets that you're throwing around that the president has promised, with the reality on the other side that passenger rail commuters are dwindling?
Look, I think we must be able to compartmentalize. I think we should be capable of doing that. Things that happened before this administrator took office, and with this administrator now in charge. And Sonia will tell you that the administrator has had numerous meetings with them and other stakeholders like commuter organizations, the unions, etc.
Yeah.
Because we want to work with everybody. And I'm talking now about also the government of the Western Cape, particularly the Department of Transport and Public Works. We've had 3 meetings with them that I've been present in. We're sharing knowledge and sharing information. That is about the commuters, helping the commuters, making sure that the central line functions, making sure that the Mapupane line functions. And that's all we can do, really. It is to commit ourselves to making PRASA better. And I can understand that people are disgruntled because problems have been obtaining for a long time. And I can understand also Mr. Ahmad, and his philosophical and ideological take on the whole situation. I'm not there. Where I am is what PRASA is doing to make sure that we look after our commuters, which is what we exist for, that we look after our employees, and that South Africa can have a passenger rail service that they can rely on.
Let's take a quick break. When we return, we conclude this conversation. Are we wrapping the show? Oh my goodness. I'm thinking we're still going to conclude matters. Okay. All right, I suppose we're going to have to make a date another day then. Thank you very much, Zaki Ahmad, for coming through this evening. And thank you, Makosini Mkijwa, and thank you to Sonia Custance. That's your Unfiltered for tonight. Goodbye.